So let's talk about our first essay. And so for our first essay, we're going to be dealing with a narrative essay that I kind of like to have a little fun with. And I centered around the idea of telling a personal narrative from the point of view of trying to live your life as a superhero. So you'll see here I've got some of our due dates. Monday through Thursday, in about 3 weeks' time, roughly, September 23rd, we're going to be conducting an online peer review of the essay, which we'll get to a little bit more detail as we get closer. We'll have a rough draft submission that Friday, and then a final draft submission will take place the Friday after. Now, the process is going to work a little bit like this, and this will be the same for all your essays. Your peer review, participating in the peer review, that means having something to submit and giving feedback to other classmates, will earn you 50 points. Your rough draft, submitting a complete draft, whether it's polished or finished is not the important part, but having all the parts from beginning to end, will get you another 50 points. If you're missing parts like a works cited page or whatever like that, you might lose some points. And then the final draft will be graded out of 100 points. And I do that for a very specific reason, to kind of give you, one, to get you to buy in and participate in the process, but more importantly, and also additionally to this, to let you know that this provides you a bit of a cushion. So, for example, if you did the peer review and you did the rough draft, you got that 100 points, and let's say for some reason on the final draft you got an 80, which is a B. Well, you don't have an 80. You don't have a B. It's not an 80 out of 100. It's a 180 out of 200 points, because the 50, 50, 100. So actually, if you take the 180 and divide it, it's 90. It's an A. So you see there's a little cushion room there for you, and that applies to all your essays. Now, what you're going to do for this essay, basically, is you're going to try and imagine your life as a superhero. Okay? So you can do this any way you want to. The only requirement is that you tell us a narrative story, and that it have elements of you trying to balance whatever version of your life. You can do it as real, about your closest to your real life, or you can make this very, very fictional. Your decision is entirely on you. But a basic example works like this. What would it be like for you to take your normal everyday life, like going to school, work, etc., while also trying to save your town or city or the world? That's kind of the basic working premise. Now, I break this into 7 blog posts, kind of in the idea that like you're chronicling your life, but also by making it 7 blog posts, it allows us to kind of break up the work so that you can do it in piecemeal. So you don't need to feel pressure to do this all at once. Feel like that you can tackle this in pieces. All right, and each blog post itself is going to be somewhere in the range of 2 to 3 paragraphs. Okay. A rough breakdown looks something like this. Your first blog post is going to operate in many ways as a kind of introduction. Okay? Blog posts 2 through 6, that's where you're going to tell us about the story itself using some vivid detail. And then the last blog post, the 7th one, is going to function kind of as our conclusion, where you'll communicate to us some significance as well. Now, I'm talking about this vivid detail and this story and the significance, because there are some other elements that tie into this, and that has to do with key elements of a well-told story. We have descriptive detail. So we have a well-told story, descriptive detail, and significance. By a well-told story, meaning we need to have, by the time you do the first blog post, the 7th blog post, you need to have a beginning, a middle, and an end. Okay? So don't try to take on a story that's too big. Focus. All right? Descriptive detail is that in the course of this story, since it's not a visual story, you're going to paint visuals with words. So you're going to use your words to try and give us mental sensations of the sights, the sounds, the smells, the taste, the texture. You want us to make us feel when we read that we are there and we can see the things that you're seeing or that are happening in a lot of good detail. And we'll be talking a little bit more specifically about that. And we'll also talk more about significance. And we'll talk about the fact that when we talk about significance, and this is something that should be sort of spelled out in the last blog post, is why did you tell this story? Okay? Why did you tell this story? Does it have a personal reason? Is there your universal reason? We'll talk more about this in the specifics, but this is something you need to include. So it can be any kind of story as long as it's about you and being a superhero. You can fictionalize it however you want, and it's going to need to have some vivid details, need to have a beginning, a middle, and an end, and have a communication of significance. All right. Now, writing your posts. I'm going to recommend, and I have a template here at the bottom, that you go ahead and do this in a Microsoft Word document. Any revision or proofing of it, we want you to do this. Now, you're going to share with us parts of this essay as we go along, but what you ultimately turn into me need to be in that Microsoft Word document. Okay? We'll proofing, editing, peer review. But let's talk about the essay. The PowerPoint here, for the most part, is slightly redundant, I admit. It covers some of the same stuff that I was talking about here, and it has a little opening about narratives and how we're doing something that's a little non-traditional. We're going to tell a story about being a superhero, make it fun. And one of the things that I like to throw out there for people is this idea of the secret identity. Okay? Secret identity always plays a function in most superhero stories, but you could actually make your entire story center around this idea of the secret identity. And I want to talk about it because it's a trope of American comic books. A character typically has dual identities, with one identity being a superhero persona and the other being a secret identity, usually their personal life. So, Spider-Man is Peter Parker, Batman is Bruce Wayne, whatever you want to do that. The secret identity is typically the superhero's civilian persona. This can also be reversed. When they are not assuming the superhero persona, the identity is a secret because superheroes must keep his identity hidden from the enemies, it's a given, and the general public to protect themselves from legal ramifications, pressure, or public scrutiny, and to protect their friends and loved ones. You could literally center your entire story about this, but this is an aspect that needs to be part of your superhero story a little bit, unless you plan on going the Tony Stark Iron Man route and having everybody know your business. So a little bit just here about narrative, okay? And we can guess that it's a story. It's a narrative is a story. In this case, it's going to be a written one. All right, so in case we're doing a superhero story, it's about a superhero narrative. It's a personal account by you of an experience in your life, imagining balancing what life would be like trying to be a superhero while also still a regular young adult. Okay? That's your basic purpose for what you're trying to achieve in this assignment if you think back to our opening lecture. And your audience is just going to be your fellow classmates, okay? But your purpose, just to give you a heads up here, is to basically create a superhero narrative account about your life being both whatever fictionalized or version of yourself you want to share with us, and also being a superhero at the same time. Now, again, we have those key features that we'll be talking more and more about, and this kind of covers some of the same thing that's on the assignment sheet. Beginning, middle, and end. And there I have laid out again the basic structure for the blog posts. The vivid details, okay, helping us feel like we are there. And there you'll see that quote again about the mental sensations. And we'll talk more about this in a separate video and post. And then talking about significance. You can make a point of using this entire writing experience as a metaphor for how, as a young adult, you have a rather busy life and it's complicated. It might be as simple as, might be that it's because you are a superhero. It's that complicated. It can be something personal, just to you, or it can have a universal significance, and we'll talk more about that as well. All right, I'm going to skip over that. Now, choosing your topic. So you need to focus this a little bit because you don't have a ton of space and time to write everything that you might, okay? So here are some suggestions. Tell us how you got your powers. Tell us about protecting your secret identity. Tell us about your interactions with a team of superheroes or a mentor. Learning how to use your powers. Not only how you got your powers, but maybe learning how to use your powers. Some sort of particular adventure, or just simply you juggling everyday life while also being a superhero. Difficult villain to overcome. Okay, all of those can work on that. Now, I'll talk a little bit more about this with you guys, but the next step in this example here is talking about a hook. Okay, and I have a separate video for that, so I'm going to end that there. But you can see me discuss more of that in that separate video on the hook. The last thing I want to mention to you guys is that at the bottom right here, and there's that essay I was talking about, there's a template and there's a checklist. The checklist is just a review of things that you want to consider before you turn it into me. Okay? It's a reminder of things that I'll be looking for. Okay? But the template is established for you so that you could go about just plugging in the information. So your name, section number, date, and I've already set this up in MLA, but For example, if I wanted to, a good way for me is I just do this, hit tab, start typing. Well, not in bold, but I could start typing right here, my introduction, my first blog post, and I would end that with a hook. And the highlighted material here just gives you some guided information. And I encourage you to give original subtitles, like right here after the colon. You don't have to, but I do want you to keep these subheadings, please. But I want every one of these blog posts to basically be filled with 2 to 3 paragraphs of information. And we'll be talking more about specific details. But after you look at the video on the hook lecture, you'll be asked to start thinking about creating this first blog post.